All right, thank you for joining us. Zach Twardowski here with Wiley Hawkins and Quentin Lanham. No one would know it, but it took us 3 times to get through that. So,
It did.
Wiley, thank you for joining us. Quentin, thank you for joining us. Wiley, if you want to start, I guess. So, Quentin, you've been here on and off, but full time now for like the last 6 months, right?
Yep.
And you help 30, 40, 50 families a month on average. And you've done it both in the field and virtually now, which we're going to talk about later. But, Wiley, if you want to go over kind of how you recruited Quentin, because it was your very first agent, right?
Yeah. So Q's been here since day one with me, dude. So I'm happy to have you on the podcast. So I got a place down in Fort Collins, Colorado. And then the guy that I actually was living right next to, he was in roofing sales. And so me and him sort of built a connection. Like I was just getting introduced to FFL, and we'd sort of go back and forth on like sales advice, built, a good relationship. And one day, we met in the morning, and he's like, "Where are you selling today?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going up to Wyoming." And he's like, "Oh, me too." I was like, "Cool." So I'm at one of my appointments. It's like 11:30, right? I just finished helping the family. And then I'm driving down the street, and then I see, his name was Steve. I see Steve's car, and I'm like, "Oh," like, because I've always wanted to recruit Steve. So I'm like, this is the perfect timing. Like, I just had a great, appointment. I've been helping families all day. Like, let me go share this with him. So I kind of start following him. Well, I do just start following him. And he's just like a turn ahead of me, right? So he takes like a left into this neighborhood. I'm like tracking him down, takes another left, and then pulls over. But the time I get there, like, he's already walking to start banging on like his route. So he's like at a door. And then I see this random kid like pulling out a ladder, but like can barely like get it out of the car and stuff. And I'm like, dude, what is this kid doing? And I'm like, hey, is that Steve over there? And Q's like, yeah, what's up? And I'm like, yeah, will you bring him over here? And he's like, why? What's going on? And he's like, what do you do? And then I sort of just shared like, what I did and like how much I was making. He's like, no way. And then he just runs over to my car. This kid just jumps in my car, dude. Like, I'm not even, like, I'm parked. He just jumps in the car, sits down. He's like, do you really do that? Like, is it, like what it sounds like? And I'm like, yeah, dude, it takes a lot of hard work. Like, it's an awesome opportunity, etc. And so Q's like, can I trade you numbers? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, he's like, if you're doing so well, why do you have these corduroy pants and why are you driving this car? I was like, dude, don't judge me. So long story short, dude, that's how me and Q got introduced. Like, essentially, sort of just, found you just banging on doors, doing roofing sales, and then, developed a relationship and sort of got going from there.
Dude, I remember, real quick, Quentin, before you go, I remember the first year Wiley was here, he wore the same corduroy pants every day. And I'm not kidding.
It was like 4 times a week.
I'm like, dude, I don't know how those pants probably stand up when Wiley's not wearing them. They have to at this point. And then Wiley showed me a picture
of
his house. And it was just a mattress on the floor.
It was a mattress pad.
A mattress, like something you go camping with.
Like 2 inches.
A mattress pad. A table that had a lamp on it, and then like his and then his toiletries. And I'm like, why do you live like that? He's like, it lets me stay focused on working. I have no distractions. I don't have a TV.
Nothing.
I have nothing. And I was like, maybe you should get a new place to live. And you were like, okay, I'll go ahead and do that.
Well, it was funny because that when like we were getting going, it was me, Quentin, and then like a couple buddies that we started out with. We would all be in my apartment. Like, one would be laying on the mattress pad, like just dialing. One would be in the bathroom, just sitting on the bathtub dialing. One person would be like walking into the house, like, hey, Mary, da 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 da, like.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then I was like, Wiley, you do well enough to have something much nicer. So you got something nicer finally, which was good. So
we have a bed now.
There's an actual bed now. Quentin, what I wanted to ask you about was when you were first getting started and you didn't have much money to get started, we gave you a bunch of leads. Leads that were anywhere from 6 months to probably 3 years old that had been worked by a bunch of different agents. We compiled probably 600 and gave them to you because you're like, I don't have any money to get started with leads. And tell everyone, like, you door knocked them all and you probably helped 30, 40 families from that set of leads. Probably more, actually. It was probably about 80 families over the course of 2 months, right?
Yeah.
So can you walk everyone through like what your mindset was going through that and why you were able to make that work?
Yeah, so essentially I was just like, I'd get up daily. I would, do my daily routine. And then once I got that stuff taken care of, I'd grab a list. I would write down everybody that I hadn't helped. And I would call them like 5, 7 times throughout the day, multiple times. And, some people pick up, people say, hey, screw you, like, I'm not interested. Other times they'd be like, yeah, I filled that out. I already been helped. And I was super new, and to be honest, if anybody knows me, I'm a spaz, right? And so like sometimes I don't really know how to like.
You got a lot of energy.
Yeah, I got a lot of energy. Don't really know how to like reciprocate what they're trying to tell me, and so there'd be times where I'd be like, thinking that they wanted me to come over and get yelled at and cussed out at. But I figured that if I knocked on every single house, right, and I called every single lead, there could be no way in chance. There's no way,
chance.
no chance, and and I would be able to overcome that because 600 families, right? There's no way in heck I wouldn't be able to help at least 10, 15, 20. No matter if I called them, door knocked them, right, figured out where they lived, that they've moved. And when I helped my first family, I went like a week and a half door knocking in this business without making a single sell. That was probably like the lowest I was at. Like I was in, Pueblo, Colorado Springs, sleeping in my car, if I'm being honest, it was really rough. And I figured that me knocking on those doors, I had nothing to lose, right? I'd go to sleep in like some gas station, wake up, get up early, shower at the truck stop, and just hammer like every single lead. And I got super blessed, I feel like, especially when I went down to Grand Junction area. I helped a lot of families, and I was able to come out of like one of the biggest pitfalls I've like found myself in through FFL, and that was by my fault, right? Because I'd make money and then I'd go blow it. And so I guess like that's probably would be like my biggest thing to tell people, is if you were to do something, is you need to stick with this business. Once you've done that multiple times, then you can, take a few days off or whatever. But until you do that consecutively and you have like a system and you're able to like get up and do that every single day, you shouldn't be taking time off with this business.
Yeah, and because you went and door knocked 600 families in the span of like a month and a half, right?
Yes.
What did you? And then it was all day, every day, Monday, like every day of the week, actually, right?
Yeah,
Did you use any tools to help map out the families you're going to go see and knock on their doors, or?
So honestly, I tried using Route Warrior, but I have ADHD, and so I would like mess up, and I'd be like, dang, like I can't continue to do this. So what I did is I would just take a piece of paper, right? Because anybody can do a mark, right, in a name. And I'd just keep going down the list. If they told me screw you or come back, then I'd put a star next to their name, right? And if I'd sold them, I'd put a check mark. So I wasn't reusing those families, and I figured that was a lot easier. It was a lot more gas mileage, but in doing so, it kept me more motivated because I could see it on paper, and it wasn't just some route I was plugging in.
And it was all types of leads, right? It wasn't just like mortgage leads or final expense leads. Because I've had people ask me like, well, how do you door knock an internet lead, right? So, and a lot of your leads you worked were internet leads, right?
Most of them were internet leads. Yeah.
So what did you say when you got to the house with these people?
So I'd knock on the door. I'd say first, last name, say, hey, it's Quentin Lanham. I'm here for our appointment. It takes 5 minutes. I'm super busy, and I kick my shoes off. I wouldn't give them the chance to tell me yay or nay. I would just do it.
Were they like, what is this for?
So some people would say that, right? But I feel like when you actually step in to a house or something and you take your shoes off, they think you mean business, right? And so even if you're not necessarily, like they don't really know what you're there for, I've had so many people just like out of like, whoa, what is this guy here for?
You're so assumptive.
Open their door, right? And then I walk to their table, and I feel like that's key when you're door knocking is you have to be assumptive. You, like Wiley said, you can't be just like willy-nilly, like trying to like, oh, it's okay. Like you have to be very assertive and stand your ground.
So if like 10 people were home that you knocked on their doors, how many people did you sit down with at that time?
So if 10 people were home and I knocked, I would honestly say if they're home, I'd probably be able to get like 4 out of the 10.
Got it. And then were you able to schedule some of the other 6 people that weren't willing to sit with you, or how many of those did you schedule appointments with usually?
So in all honesty, I kind of did it like a one-call close, right?
Got it.
So I would knock, and because I figured that, hey, if they're like, oh, we need to like do this some other time, they weren't really interested, and I didn't want to waste my time because I was in between doing that, I was door dashing, so I can continue to run that high of volume.
Got it.
And so it really helped me.
And like, what kept you going through all that? Because it ended up working out, and you ended up, getting out of the hole you were in and all that sort of stuff. But what kept you going when you had to grind out like that? Because that wasn't a lot of fun, right?
Yeah, no, definitely not. So honestly, what kept me going is, I had gotten into a lot of debt with FFL in the beginning because I would write policies, right, and then they would charge back because it's not what they wanted. I wasn't doing a thorough job of underwriting or whatever the case may have been. And so one thing that stuck out to me is I actually got so far into debt that Wiley had to put me on as earned to keep him from going to collections, right, and having that fall onto him. And so when he had called me and he was like, yeah, you went on as earned, I remember I was like standing somewhere. I think it was a park or something, and I was on the phone with Wiley, and I was like, dude, like, like, listen, like, give me a few weeks. Like, give me a few weeks. Let me show you what I can do. And to be honest with you, if I didn't have such like a good upline as someone that's understanding and knows what struggle is, I probably would not be doing this, because he's the one that let me, you know, out of everybody else say, no, you probably shouldn't put him back on this and that. He went against everybody and he put me back on, right? And so he gave me that chance. And then when I got that chance, I was like, you know, like, I'm in debt. Like, I cannot just leave and run away from this. Like, if I, you know, that's a coward, and I'm not a coward. I've never been one. And so I'm not ever going to, like, I'm not going to quit on something, especially when someone sticks their neck out that far and then lets me do what I had to do to be successful, right? Like, Wiley's helped me probably a lot, just like you, Zach, and like a lot of people have helped me in this business.
Yeah. No, I think it's been like a real testament to just your story, from how we met, how much work you were putting in, but you were just, you know, the reason why you got yourself in that position, because you'd ride the wave of helping families and then taking a few days off, maybe a week or two off, helping some families.
Like months, dude.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, like maybe 3 months off at one point.
Dude,
I went to
because
Virginia
sometimes I
Beach.
wouldn't. Yeah,
No, like,
I mean,
I did. I went
You went to
on a whole-
Disneyland, right?
I went
right.
on a whole
And
binge.
so for anybody that's new, you know, obviously you can't ride that roller coaster if you guys can just make a schedule. That's the hardest thing about being 1099, is you're your own boss, you're self-employed. So when you're not working, you're unemployed, right? And you got to realize that for your first 9 months here, that it's an advanced loan business. So if you quit working, you're obviously going to have things come your way that aren't going to help you. But what I wanted to speak on was, I remember when I made the decision to like send you all, like, dude, these leads were a year, you know, 2 years old. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, is he really going to squeeze like and help some families out of this? And Q would be door knocking till 9 at night. He would go back to houses when the clients were like, we're like sort of shaky. He'd like, dude, I just went back because I knew they needed the help. Right. And I think out of, you know, 600 leads, you were able to help 80 families, but you spent every single second of the day doing it. And I think that's just a testament to like anybody that has that work ethic, that desire, like the habits and the discipline. Like, you can, no matter what type of situation you're in, typically, as long as you're, you know, have a good attitude like you did, you're willing to listen and go to work, like, you know, you can have a good result. So that was like super, super huge.
Yeah. And then recently, and so you got out of that hole, you started, you know, investing back into leads and started doing, you know, helping 30 families a month and really consistently. And then recently you've kind of transitioned to do the same thing, but doing it with virtual sales, right?
Yeah.
So, and you went back through a bunch of the old leads that you worked when you were in the field again and called them over, and you helped in 1 week 17 families from the same old leads that we gave you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So can you kind of go back for everyone that wants to do virtual sales, what your process looks like? Like what does a day in the life of, you know, just doing one call closes look like for everyone?
Yeah, so I mean, you get up, right? It's kind of like your typical dial day. You come in and accept, you know, instead of dialing all day, you're just either calling to book an appointment for that night or you're calling to close them immediately. And I think the biggest thing with like telesales or virtual, anything like that, those people, there's not a lot of push you can give them. So if you're being pushy, they just click the phone, right? And so you have to be able to understand like what they're wanting. And so what I've found very helpful for me is I've been a bottom closer, right? And so what that means is I'll show them options, but only in like the lower realms unless they want more coverage. I'm like, hey, do you want me to go higher or lower? Or is
Right.
that good for you, right? And I feel like that's also helped me. And being assertive, right? Being very assertive. I'm like, hey, you filled this out. My name's Quentin Lanham. You filled this out. We can do this 1 or 2 ways. I can come out there and we can pour a cup of coffee, or we can do this over the phone. Which do you prefer?
And that's how you open up when
Exactly,
you're calling them.
right? And I say most people prefer the first option.
You kind of lead them down the trail of like, let's do this over the phone.
Exactly. Yep. Because
Yeah.
I'm dialing like Wisconsin and different areas where I'm not located, and so you have to be. But I feel like once you give them that option, most people, unless they're weird, I've had only one weird occasion, then they're going to be like, yeah, let's do it over the phone. Because in all honesty, if you can do it over the phone, most people don't want you coming out to their house.
Yeah.
And then once they say, okay, I'll do it over the phone, let's do it right now, is your in-home any different than a normal in-home, or is it pretty much the same?
So it is different. So I take the clientele sheet, and then what I do is once I got it like kind of like a figure in my head of like what they can afford and all this other stuff and what they're looking for, I open up with, hey, usually people fill this out for 3 reasons, right? A, for burial, B, a legacy, or C, income replacement. Out of those, which one do you fit into? And then once I figured out the why, I'm like, okay, perfect, John. 3 things are going to happen today. I'm going to show you something that's affordable that you qualify for, and then we will be submitting for coverage today. And I tell them that, right? And a lot of people are, okay, right? And then once I go through the clientele sheet, once I get to the end, I'm like, all right, perfect, great news, John. You've been pre-approved. But like I said, I'm only the eyes and ears of the insurance industry, so I'm not able to make that final decision. We have to do one more medical check. What's your social?
And so that's how you grab the social.
And that's how I open with the social. And I feel like that's very, very key because like you're basically saying like I don't have the control here. And so if you guys want to be approved today, it's not up to me. Like I'm just the kind of the
Yeah, no, dude, I love that because you don't show quotes until you get the social security number, right? That's your
Exactly.
style.
Yeah.
And I actually think that for telesales, that, you know, saves you a lot of time. It's more efficient because if you give them quotes and then you get in the app and they're like, well, I'm not going to give you my social. It's like, well, dude, you just saved yourself 5-10 minutes.
It's a waste of time.
And then I like how you know, sort of put that leverage on the carriers and their health, like saying, hey, I'm the eyes and ears of this company, right? But it's not up to me to make the decision. So they're going to have to run that HIPAA medical background check on you, you know,
make
go
sure
ahead
not-
with your social.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, right?
To make sure you're not lying to me. And I feel like that puts their ego in the way. And so they're like, well, I'm not lying to you, kid. So here it is. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so that really does help.
And I like, do you feel like compared to, so the in-home for me is typically like a longer appointment because I can sit down, I can like, you know, play with their dog or like obviously they could be making dinner and like we get to like really build rapport. But with the phone and Zoom, it's very just to the point. Have you seen any differences in that or?
So with that, I would mostly say transactional because when you're on the phone with somebody, right, I kind of take it like this. If I were to call in to like my pharmacist or something or some type of doctor,
Sure.
they're not going to want to talk to me about like, hey, their day-to-day life, right? They're going to just want to get what I need to know, and then I want to be off the phone. And so I feel like the faster you move through that process, the faster you're going to be able to get to the people that actually want the coverage and you'll be able to help them.
Absolutely. And then you've transitioned pretty much to doing all virtual sales. And like we talked about, so you can start building a team. So your goal is to help, 10 to 15 families as soon as you can throughout the week and then spend the rest of the week recruiting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And doing more market, calling ads and everything like that. So if anyone's watching this and they want to get a hold of you and want to work with you, what's your phone number so they can call you?
It's going to be 970-889-7776.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much for getting on with us. Thank you for, all your hard work and the example you set for everyone, and honored to be in business with you. And